Oh no, our boy Ash Ketchum is horribly late for his very first Pokemon. Well, you snooze, you lose, because his rival Gary Oak has just gotten his starter Pokemon from none other than his Gramps, Professor Samuel Oak. Gary claims that he's got the best Pokemon of them all and promises to become a Pokemon master and bring pride to the humble town of Pallet. Gary Oak leaves to conquer the world in his convertible as he's accompanied by these cheerleaders who do nothing but drive for him and cheer him on his journey. Man, this guy's got it good. Being neighbors, Gary grew up together with Ash and they've been frenemies since their childhood. He's very snarky and full of himself, which makes him a fun character to watch and root against. Starting this day, they are now rivals, each paving their own unique path towards becoming a Pokemon master. As a non-protagonist, Gary's story isn't told on a granular level, but he seems to have not faced that much difficulty, especially in his early days. He does quick work of Brock, Misty, and several other gym leaders, and by the time Ash catches his 7th Pokemon, Gary has already managed to catch a whopping 45 Pokemon, with his Krabby being humongous compared to Ash's. At this point, we see that Gary is 10 steps ahead of Ash. He's always chill, confident, and just genuinely enjoys the adventure of catching and training his Pokemon. For most of the Kanto saga, Gary shows up mainly for comic relief, adding spice and entertainment to the episodes with his insults and roast towards Ash. Gary is so funnily arrogant that when he visits Sinnoh Island, he doesn't even bother to take on the gym challenge. Instead, he decides to take the day off and go on a vacation. Basically, he's just there to roast Ash even more, and honestly, it never gets old. Soon later, Ash and the gang arrive at Viridian City for Ash to claim his 8th and final gym badge. Gary is here too with the same goal of winning a badge, except that Gary already has 10 freaking gym badges, and he's aiming to take his 11th badge. That's 3 excess badges to enter the Kanto League. Mad respect for this dude. Up until this point, Gary's journey through Kanto has been very smooth sailing, or driving, but his Viridian City gym experience is totally different. He battles none other than Giovanni, who's equipped with an overpowered Mewtwo. No matter how hard he tries, Gary just couldn't lay a finger against a legendary Pokemon, which results in him and his Pokemon getting knocked out cold. When he regains consciousness, Gary warns Ash of the dangers of the Viridian Gym, which doesn't end up mattering because Ash just battles a discount version of Team Rocket, Jesse, and James. And when Ash wins the battle, Gary admits that Ash has indeed become a good trainer, showing that behind his snide remarks, Gary truly looks at Ash as a serious rival. Before the Kanto League, Gary and Ash first visit Pallet Town. Here, Professor Oak tells them that they're the only 2 Pallet trainers who have remained to continue on their adventures, as the others have given up or pursued different goals. He also scans their Pokédexes and finds out that Gary has only seen 60 different species of Pokemon, which is inferior to Ash's over 100 species of Pokemon. Despite this, Gary still has caught more Pokemon than Ash, with over 200, suggesting that Gary has multiple Pokemon of the same species. Soon after, Pallet Town's pride and joy Gary Oak and Ash Ketchum march towards Indigo Plateau for the Kanto League Championships. Here, Gary makes a great display of his skills and training as he breezes through the first 3 rounds in different battlefields, motivated by his ever-energetic cheerleading squad. However, in the 4th round, Gary faces a proficient trainer named Melissa. Unfortunately for Gary, Melissa's Nidoking finishes Golem off with a seismic toss on a rugged rock field. This ends Gary's journey in the Kanto League, leaving Ash as the only Pallet Town trainer citizen left in the tournament, who then loses in the next round. What a shame. Gary has always been way ahead of Ash, but he ends up placing lower than him in the most important tournament. This loss only makes Gary train even harder for his next tournament, so he decides to go on another journey, still aiming to be a Pokemon master. Following Ash's success in the Orange Islands, Gary returns to Pallet Town, saving Ash and his friends from another one of Team Rocket's schemes. Learning that Ash just beat the undefeated Supreme Gym Leader of the Orange Islands, Gary decides to test his skills in a Pokemon battle. Gary sends out his Eevee against Ash's Pikachu. This was a nice Pokemon Yellow reference if we ever got one. Even if Ash is at his best, this battle shows that Gary has not been slacking at all. He trained Eevee to be a well-rounded battler using a combination of defensive, evasive, and offensive tactics to outsmart Pikachu and finish it off with just 1 attack. Ash and Gary have been rivals from the very first episode of Pokemon, but it took 116 episodes before they engaged in their first battle. That's a long stretch of just bickering, and this battle truly showcases that Gary is still several steps ahead of Ash, not just in catching Pokemon, but also in Pokemon battling. This battle beautifully sets the stage for the future of the rivalry, as they both head to the Johto region where a new set of badges is waiting to be claimed, and an even tougher Pokemon League is ready to commence. In Johto, Gary has caught even more Pokemon, and we learned that his Eevee has evolved into Umbreon, one that's shown to be still dominant in battles, even defeating a trainer's Alakazam. Type advantage. Gary then joins the Extreme Pokemon race with his own legendary Pokemon, Arcanine, where he crosses paths with Ash once again. They compete in a skateboard race with their Pokemon to win a Pokemon Egg. Gary and Arcanine dominate most of the race, but thanks to the power of love and friendship, Ash and Bayleaf narrowly whip their way to victory. It's cool that Ash won, but it's nice to think in a world where Gary owns the Phanpy that eventually belonged to Ash. But knowing Gary, he probably has one already. Now, Gary and Ash are tied with 1 win each against each other. Looks like they're gonna have to settle the score at some point. How about in the Johto League? And here we are, the Silver Conference, the conference that gave us the best episode of all time, and I'm of course talking about the introduction of Harrison. Jokes aside, Gary's presence provides a lot of entertainment and depth to the Silver Conference. Unlike the Indigo Plateau where he's just arrogant and insults Ash all the time, Gary has grown to be a more mature and serious trainer with a clear goal of winning the league. Here, he breezes through the preliminaries, eventually making the top 48. During the lighting of the torch, Team Rocket accidentally enters the Torch Runner, so Gary takes the initiative of assisting the Torch Runner, letting Ash throw the torch and set the stadium ablaze. And at one point he even backs Harrison's White Light Officer Jenny, so to not put Ash and Jackson in danger of being disqualified when their Pokemon were fighting. Talk about kings helping other kings. Gary eventually advances to the top 16 where the full 6-on-6 battles begin. In the first round, he's matched up with no one else than his longtime childhood friend and rival, Ash Ketchum. Before the battle, it's revealed that Gary and Ash had a meaningful moment just before their journeys began. The two of them were fishing when suddenly both caught something. They reeled it in so hard only to find out that they managed to snag the same thing, an old Pokeball. Both Gary and Ash fight to grab a hold of the old Pokeball just as it breaks into two pieces. To this day, Gary and Ash have kept their own half of the Pokeball as a good luck charm. Hashtag bestie goals. The day has soon arrived when Palutena's pride and joy face each other in a full battle. Everything they've learned so far in the journeys is going to be put to the test in this battle. The battle starts out with Gary's Nidoqueen versus Ash's Tauros. Gary quickly gains the upper hand after landing a close-range Hyper Beam. Ash then evens the score when Heracross overcomes the type disadvantage and defeats Gary's Magmar. Now, Gary wouldn't let Ash gain any momentum, so he sends out a secret weapon, his strongest Pokemon, his very first partner, Blastoise, revealing that he picked Squirtle as his starter Pokemon from Professor Oak. Blastoise proceeds to annihilate both of Ash's Heracross and Bayleaf, arguably the two strongest Pokemon of his Johto team. Maybe if Totodile was in this battle, things would have been a little bit different given his track record of beating Kanto starters. After the timeout, Ash is able to regain control when Snorlax steps in. It's able to crush both Gary's Arcanine and Nidoqueen. Of course, Gary's no pushover, so he retaliates with his Scizor, slicing through both Ash's Snorlax and Muck. Now Ash is down to his final Pokemon against Gary's 3. He calls on Charizard, which Gary predicted, and the Flying Lizard defeats Scizor with Flamethrower. Gary has the perfect counter just in case Ash brings his two strongest Pokemon, Charizard and Pikachu, and that's Golem. Besides the massive type advantage, another one of Golem's perks is that it's so heavy that Charizard can't use it for Seismic Toss. But despite this, Charizard still has other attacks like Dragon Rage, which puts an end to Gary's secret weapon. Now, both trainers are down to the last Pokemon, Charizard versus Blastoise, with Gary having the type advantage. This is one of, if not the most iconic 1v1 battles in the Pokemon anime history, besides Charizard versus Blaziken and Metapod versus Metapod. Blastoise has a nice way of deflecting Charizard attacks by rapid spinning and firing back with powerful Hydro Pumps. But to Gary's surprise, Ash also finds a way to overcome a major disadvantage. First, he burns the entire battlefield, melting all the stones and preventing Blastoise from moving. And even if Blastoise tries to cool the field, Charizard comes in at close range to avoid the trajectory of Hydro Pump. Charizard attacks with one final Seismic Toss, and Blastoise is defeated. Like before, Gary loses the league to a Seismic Toss on a rock field. He should really avoid these things. This battle proves that Ash has managed to catch up and probably even surpass Gary when it comes to training Pokemon. Gary's got a lot of reflecting to do, and later that night by the lake, Gary gives Ash his half of the Pokeball, perhaps signifying solidarity between two distinct trainers who respect each other. Near the end of the Johto League, Gary finds himself in a situation where he, Ash, and Harrison help a group of mischievous find their lost friend. Ash is surprised by Gary's knowledge and skills at handling the situation, and also in Pokemon in general. So it's here where Gary reveals that he no longer wants to continue joining Pokemon leagues and battling gyms. Instead, he wants to become a Pokemon researcher mainly focused on Pokemon evolution. Now he's going to be working in a similar field as his grandfather, but knowing Gary, he's definitely not going to live in the shadows of Professor Oak. He's absolutely going to make a name for himself and probably even exceed his grandpa's expertise. Gary then returns to Palatown before setting on a new adventure, this time as an inspiring Pokemon researcher. Also, Gary decides to have a fresh start as he leaves all of his Pokemon in Professor Oak's corral, taking only Blastoise with him, which then inspires Ash to do the same in Hoenn. In the end, Ash returns Gary's half of the old Pokeball, denoting that despite their paths have diverged after the Silver Conference, Gary and Ash will always carry a piece of each other wherever they go. Hashtag bestie goals. Gary's path as a Pokemon researcher is not shown without roadblocks. At one point, he's working on a fossil research with Dora inside a lab. During this time, he manages to revive an Aerodactyl from an old amber, but of course, Aerodactyl is frightened by everything around, since this is not the world we used to live in. This causes massive chaos in the lab, giving Aerodactyl an opening to escape. Now, Gary is second guessing if he really is cut out to be a Pokemon researcher, but Professor Oak and Tracy reassure him that he's already done a good job so far, even reviving the Aerodactyl, which was already a big accomplishment. Gary is reminded that everyone learns from their mistakes, and soon after the team finds Aerodactyl, and slowly but surely, Gary gains the trust of the flying fossil. This earns Gary a lot of respect from Dora, and she offers him a full-time job in the lab to research on the extinct Pokemon. Later on, Gary's research expedition leads into the Sinnoh region. He sends Ash a postcard of a beautiful view of Sinnoh, which only motivates Ash to do better in his battle with Brandon. And once Ash claims all of the frontier symbols, Gary reunites with him in Pallet Town where they have another battle. It's Battle Frontier winner Ash Ketchum with his trusty Pikachu, who, mind you, just recently defeated a freaking Regice, versus experienced researcher Gary Oak with his new partner from the Sinnoh region, Electivire. Despite having shown to quit the gym challenge, Gary is shown to have brawn and strategic chops in the battle arena. History repeats itself as Gary's Electivire outshines Pikachu in every single way, defeating a frontier brain level trainer and making Ash realize that the world out there is still full of strong Pokemon he's never seen before, which causes him to explore the Sinnoh region. Because of that, we thank Gary Oak for leading us to the best series of the Pokemon franchise. Gary leaves after the battle, and the next time we see him is in the Diamond and Pearl saga, where he's revealed to have been working as Professor Rowan's assistant on their research on rare Pokemon. Gary is now in his most mature self, showcasing a new level of politeness and respect. On multiple occasions, Gary has lent a big helping hand at foiling the plans of evil teams. Together with Ash, he manages to save a group of Shieldon from the hands of Hunter J, and during the Team Galactic final arc, Gary tries to protect the Cell from getting captured by Saturn and Hunter J. However, he's unsuccessful at that, so he decides to stay on the sidelines with Professor Rowan as they observe the phenomenon in Mount Coronet after Cyrus tries to summon Dialga and Palkia. When the whole thing is over, Gary helps clean up the mess and takes the Adamant and Lustrous Orbs to Professor Carolina in Celestic Town where they belong. Not long after, Gary leaves Sinnoh and decides to travel around the world to extend his research on Pokemon, which then brings us to Pokemon Journeys, where Gary is revealed to be back in Pallet Town to go after a Moltres. Here he reunites with Ash and us, the Pokemon fans, after being absent from our screens for 3 straight generations. When Moltres appears, Gary and Ash battle intensely until the legendary bird is forced to retreat, but not before dropping one of the burning feathers, which is what Gary was actually pursuing. Turns out Gary is on a quest called Project Mew, where trainers earn tokens on their trial missions for them to be promoted to become chasers who will join an elite group to search for Mew. Getting one of Moltres' feathers is Gary's trial mission, and since he manages to take one, he is rewarded with a token. Throughout the episode, Gary has been taunting Go, who he sees to not be on the same skill level as him, and Ash. He really is still the Gary we know and love. This only causes Go to want to join Project Mew, and with that, Gary finds himself a new rival. Next, Gary is tasked to work alongside Go and Horus, 2 of his fellow Project Mew aspiring chasers, as well as Ash, who probably has FOMO at meeting another legendary bird. Their mission is to have a raid battle with Articuno. That's it, they don't have to win, they just gotta battle it. Now, Go at this point still thinks negatively of Gary, so he struggles to work with him and the rest of the group. Despite this, Gary takes charge and leads the group to execute smart combinations and at least give them a fighting chance. They eventually do lose, and Articuno escapes, but they're still awarded with tokens, with Gary gaining an extra one for his leadership and teamwork skills. In the end, he gives Go a brief lecture on how a Project Mew challenger should act. He emphasizes that being strict is very important if one wants to reach Mew. With that, Gary begins to understand Gary's mentality. Finally, Gary and Go meet at the Split Decision Ruins for the final trial mission. This trial mission is the toughest one of all, as they require to catch a Regidrago and Regieleki. Unlike before, Gary and Go manage to work in perfect sync, defeating Lila and Sterling in a battle, and proceed to play an excellent level of teamwork as both catch the Regis. With that, Gary places first in the number of tokens earned, far above the rest of the challengers. He is then qualified to become a Project Mew chaser and joins Quillen, Danica, and Professor Amaranth, as well as Go and Harris on their mission to search for the mythical Pokemon Mew. Together they explore Faraway Island, and after conquering treacherous obstacles and traps set by Mew, Gary and the team manage to see Mew face to face, a majestic sight that only a few people in the world have ever witnessed in their lifetime. Afterwards, Project Mew is disbanded, and Gary continues his path on becoming the best Pokemon researcher that he can be, this time with lots of wisdom and experiences gained from undergoing the trials in Project Mew. The Project Mew expedition is also the day that Ash wins the Masters Tournament, so Gary isn't able to watch it live. But when they reunite again in Pallet Town, Gary congratulates Ash on becoming the New World Monarch, and he does what he does best, make Ash ponder. He asks Ash, now that he's a world champion, how much closer is he to his dream of becoming a Pokemon Master? Gary leaves without waiting for an answer because he knows deep down that Ash is going to figure it out on his own. And that's it for Gary Oak's complete history. Gary is one of the most likable characters in the entire Pokemon franchise, and there's no surprise that he still remained one of the most, if not the most popular rival that Ash has ever had. We've watched him begin his journey as a snarky jerk to a respectful and respectable prodigy, while still keeping the things we love about him. Gary is indeed someone who has shown natural talent in everything he does, be it battling, research, or just being funny. He is that character who elevates an episode with just his presence, and everything that comes out of his mouth is either filled with hilarity or deep substance. Thank you all so much for watching Gary Oak's Complete History, and as always, it's been your boy Luap, but this time, I think I'm gonna smell you later.
That's right, loser, and it's right inside this Pokeball.
Let's go, Gary! Let's go! Yeah, yeah!
Thank you, fans. Thank you all for this great